A first-class ticket is supposed to mean something. It is supposed to say, "You belong here." But for 18-year-old Elior Hayes, that meaning was about to be tested. Los Angeles International Airport. Gate C-17. The air shimmered with recycled chill and fluorescent light. Rolling suitcases murmured like distant thunder. Travelers lined up beneath the glowing letters of Skylux Airways, Flight 107 to New York City. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Elior Hayes. Elior stood near the front of the line, hands in the pocket of his black hoodie, a single boarding pass between his fingers. He looked calm, almost invisible among the perfume and pressed suits. That was exactly how he wanted it. The lead flight attendant noticed him. Her name tag read DANACLARKE. Her hair was wound so tight it looked like control itself, her smile polished to corporate perfection. She had seen thousands of faces, but this one made her pause. The hoodie, the sneakers, the brown skin. Her voice sliced through the hum of the terminal. "Sweetheart, that is the first-class line. Economy is over there." Every head nearby turned. The silence that followed was not quiet, it was charged. Elior raised his eyes slowly, met her look, and spoke evenly. "I know, seat 7A. The gate agent hesitated, unsure which world he was supposed to serve. The scanner beeped green, valid ticket. Still, Dana's lips curved into a patronizing smirk. "Oh, really? That must be some kind of glitch." A ripple of awkward laughter rolled through the queue, the kind of laughter that tries to agree with power. Elior did not move. He felt the heat rise under his collar, but his voice stayed calm. "There is no mistake. Please scan it again." She did. The green light blinked twice, undeniable. Yet she stepped closer, lowering her tone but raising her disdain. "You might want to check with the staff at the back, honey. This section is for premium passengers." Her words landed like slaps disguised as politeness. The man behind Elior, an older businessman with silver hair, frowned but said nothing. A younger attendant, Camilla, looked down at her tablet. She could see the tag next to his name, Executive Family Clearance. She knew what it meant, but fear pressed her tongue still. The loudspeaker called another boarding group. Dana sighed impatiently, tapping one manicured nail against the podium. "Sir, I am not going to argue about seating arrangements. Please step aside." Elior's jaw tightened. Years of his mother's lessons echoed in his mind. When they test your dignity, pass the test quietly. He exhaled. "No problem," he said softly, stepping aside, letting the others pass. The businessman behind him shook his head, whispering under his breath, "Unbelievable." Elior took a seat by the window, phone in hand, ticket still warm between his fingers. He typed one line of text he never thought he would use. "Boarding denial, gate C-17, Skylux flight, attendant named Dana Clark." He pressed send. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we are glad you are here." Now back to Elior Hayes. Elior found a seat by the wide glass wall that overlooked the runway. Outside, the evening light broke across the tarmac in strips of gold and gray. Planes lifted into the air one after another, steady, deliberate, free. Inside, the terminal hummed with announcements, chatter, and the rustle of plastic boarding passes. He sat quietly, phone in hand, his face calm but his chest still tight from what had just happened. The moment replayed in his mind, the tone in her voice, the look on the faces around him, the strange quiet that followed. He had seen it before, different words, same meaning. A child once, standing beside his mother at a private lounge counter, holding her hand while the receptionist smiled too sweetly and said, "I am sorry, ma'am. This area is for premium members only. He remembered the pause before his mother spoke, the silence that felt heavier than anger. Now, years later, that lesson still lived in him. He heard her voice as clearly as the sound of the engines outside. When they question your place, do not explain. Let time do that for you. His phone buzzed. A message appeared from his mother, Amara Hayes. Boarding soon. Call me when you land. He typed only one word back. Almost. He knew she would sense that something had happened, but she would not press. She believed in tests, the kind that reveal character more than comfort. Elior looked at the reflection in the window. The hoodie, the sneakers, the quiet defiance of not needing to prove himself. He smiled faintly. This was what she wanted him to see, the world as it is, not as the brochures describe it. Across the gate, Dana Clark stood with a tablet in her hand, pretending to review passenger data. Her eyes drifted toward him now and then, searching for something she could still control. She adjusted her uniform jacket, her smile rehearsed again. The fluorescent light glinted off her name badge, a symbol of power she did not truly understand. Camilla Ortiz, the younger attendant, leaned toward the gate agent. Her voice was a whisper, but Elior caught a trace of it. His pass is real. The system flagged him under executive family clearance. The agent frowned, uncertain. Dana's gaze snapped toward them, cold and sharp. Mind your task, Camilla. I will handle this passenger. The words carried further than she intended. A few travelers shifted, pretending not to listen. A businessman coughed awkwardly. No one said a thing. Elior rose when the next announcement came. Skylux Airways Flight 107 to New York City is now boarding first class. He walked toward the line again, same calm steps, same steady breathing. Dana straightened as he approached, her expression carefully neutral. She reached for his boarding pass without meeting his eyes. The scanner beeped, green again. Enjoy your flight, she said, the words clipped and brittle. Elior nodded, stepped through the gate, and entered the tunnel that led to the aircraft. The air inside was cooler, quieter, filled with the scent of jet fuel and new leather. Each step echoed against the narrow walls. He paused before the cabin door, taking one slow breath. This was not about proving a point. It was about watching how truth reveals itself when no one thinks it will. Behind him, the terminal noise faded. Ahead, a new kind of silence waited, the silence of altitude where masks always fall away. And as Elior crossed the threshold into the plane, the story that had started with a laugh at the gate was about to rise 30,000 feet higher. The cabin lights shimmered in a calm white glow as passengers settled into their seats. The hum of the engines pulsed beneath the carpeted floor like a heartbeat waiting to climb into the sky. Elior placed his backpack neatly under the seat in front of him and adjusted the strap of his hoodie. He glanced around, taking in the quiet elegance of first class, soft leather seats, glass dividers, the faint scent of citrus and jet fuel. Dana Clark stood at the entrance, greeting passengers with the same manufactured warmth that came with her job. When her eyes found Elior already seated in 7A, a flicker of disbelief passed over her face. It vanished quickly, replaced by a strained smile. "Sir, can I help you with something?" Elior looked up. "No, thank you." She nodded, but her hand hovered just above his ticket stub. "I just want to make sure you are in the correct seat." He handed her the ticket. She scanned it again, the light flashing green. Still, she frowned as if the machine had betrayed her. "Interesting. I just wanted to confirm," she murmured, though everyone nearby could hear her. A man, too, rose back, raised an eyebrow. The woman beside him adjusted her scarf, whispering something about protocols. It was not loud, but it was enough to turn heads. Elior's voice remained even. "Everything is confirmed, thank you." Dana pressed her lips together, stepping back. Her polished heels clicked once against the floor before she turned toward the galley. Her movements were sharp, deliberate, each one saying what her words did not. You are out of place." Across the aisle, Camilla Ortiz was arranging drink trays, but her eyes drifted toward Elior. She saw the line of tension in his shoulders, the way his hand stayed still. Her conscience stirred. She wanted to say something, anything, but Dana's earlier warning echoed in her head. "Mind your task, Camilla." A chime signaled final boarding. The captain's voice filled the speakers, calm and professional. "Good evening, passengers. Welcome aboard Skylux Airways Flight 107 to New York City. We will be departing shortly. Please fasten your seat belts and enjoy your flight." The cabin doors closed. Dana began her walk down the aisle, checking buckles, adjusting headrests. When she reached Elior again, she leaned slightly closer. "Sir, we expect passengers in this section to follow our dress standards. Hooded clothing can be removed once we take off." Her tone was polite enough to sound professional, but cold enough to sting. Elior looked at her, unblinking. "I am comfortable as I am, thank you." For a moment their eyes locked. It was not defiance. It was quiet endurance, the kind that comes from knowing you are being tested. Dana turned away, lips tight. She whispered something into her earpiece, a quick coded exchange with another attendant. Elior caught only fragments. "Passenger, verification, seat 7 Alpha." The plane began to taxi, the vibration low and steady. Outside, runway lights stretched like a trail of molten gold. Elior leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the rhythm of motion steady his breath. Camilla moved quietly past him, setting a water bottle on his tray table. "Here, sir, in case you get thirsty." Her kindness was small but sincere. Elior met her eyes and nodded. "Thank you." She smiled, almost in relief, then hurried back toward the galley before Dana could notice. As the plane lifted off, Elior looked out the window. The city lights spread below like a constellation of unspoken stories. In every one of them, he imagined someone being told they did not belong. He whispered to himself, too softly for anyone to hear, "Let them think what they want, the sky will decide." The engines roared. The cabin tilted toward the night, and the higher they climbed, the smaller Prejudice looked from above. The plane leveled at 30,000 feet. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber hue, leaving the aisles wrapped in a calm half-darkness. Dinner service began. The clink of glass and the hum of the air system filled the quiet space like background music to a film no one wanted to star in. Elior sat still, watching the condensation slide down his untouched glass of water. His reflection shimmered faintly in the window beside him. Every sound, every movement carried weight now. The subtle cough from the man in seat 8B, the whisper of a newspaper turning. The slow, careful steps of Dana Clark moving between passengers with her tray. She stopped at his row. "Dinner?" she asked, tone neutral. "Just water," Elior replied. Her eyes moved to his hoodie again. "It is a long flight, sir. Are you sure you do not want something warm? We have a special menu tonight." Her politeness was thin. He nodded once, calm. "I am fine, thank you." She lingered half a second too long, then turned away, muttering under her breath. The businessman 2 seats away raised his brows but said nothing. That was the pattern, witnesses with lips sealed by comfort. Across the aisle, Mr. Leung, the Singaporean investor, watched the small exchange. His sharp eyes missed nothing. He had seen this kind of scene before in airports and boardrooms alike. Prejudice, quiet but precise, dressed as protocol. Dana continued her service, a perfect smile painted over quiet irritation. She stopped near the galley where Camilla Ortiz stood, stacking cups. "Be careful with 7A, Dana whispered. "He is sensitive." Camilla looked up, unsure. "Sensitive or disrespected?" she asked softly. Dana's smile froze for a moment. "Do your job, Camilla. That is all that is required." Camilla nodded, but inside, something cracked open. She had joined Skylux believing it was a company built on equality and grace. Now she wondered if those words were just part of the brand. Back in his seat, Elior scrolled slowly through photos on his phone. One showed his mother standing beside a Skylux aircraft, hand raised toward the sunrise. She had once said, "If you want to know how a company really treats people, watch how it treats those with no titles." He looked toward the aisle. Dana was laughing now, effortlessly, at something a passenger had said. Her laughter was high and deliberate, meant to perform grace. It struck him how easily cruelty can hide behind professionalism. A tremor of turbulence rippled through the cabin. The lights flickered once. A few passengers gasped. Dana steadied herself, adjusting her jacket, pretending control. Mr. Loong chuckled quietly. "The sky does not care for appearances," he murmured, half to himself. Camilla, hearing him, smiled faintly. "No, sir, it really does not." When the seatbelt sign turned off, Dana resumed her rounds. She stopped beside Elior again, her tone more clipped this time. "Sir, please keep your phone on airplane mode. We have regulations." "It is," he said evenly. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Let us not have any more misunderstandings tonight." Elior looked straight ahead, agreed. Mr. Loong's gaze followed the exchange, quiet but alert. His fingers tapped against his armrest, 3 slow beats, thoughtful. He reached for the call button. When Camilla appeared, he asked gently, "Could you confirm the passenger list for first class?" Her eyes widened, but she understood. "Yes, sir, right away." A moment later she returned, voice low. "It is there. E. Hayes, Executive Family Clearance." Loong's expression did not change, but his eyes warmed with realization. "Thank you," he whispered. As Camilla walked away, Loong looked once more toward Elior, who had closed his eyes, resting his head against the seat. The older man nodded to himself. "The world is still learning," he said quietly. "But tonight the lesson is about to start." Outside, the plane cut through a stretch of midnight air, steady and unbothered, leaving behind the earthbound weight of every judgment below. Dinner service reached its quiet rhythm. The cabin glowed under soft amber lights, trays clinking faintly, voices hushed to polite murmurs. Dana Clark moved through the aisle with a polished smile, her tray balanced perfectly in her hands. To anyone watching, she looked composed, but inside she was a storm of resentment. Something about the young man in 7A unsettled her, a calm that refused to submit. She stopped beside Elior's seat. "Would you like to try our reserve red wine, sir?" Elior shook his head gently. "No, thank you, I do not drink." Her lips twitched, almost a smirk. "Of course not." She reached past him, pretending to serve the passenger in 7B. The glass tilted slightly, just enough for a thin stream of dark liquid to escape over the rim. It hit Elior's sleeve first, then splashed across his laptop and the armrest. Gasps rippled from nearby seats. The smell of wine, rich and sharp, filled the air. Dana's hand flew to her mouth in feigned shock. "Oh dear, I am so sorry." Elior looked down. The crimson stain spread like a wound through the gray fabric of his hoodie. A drop rolled from his wrist onto the screen of his laptop, fracturing the light into small, trembling reflections. He stayed completely still. No raised voice, no gesture of anger, only a slow inhale through his nose. Dana reached for a napkin. "Here, let me just—" He lifted a hand, stopping her mid-motion. "Do not touch it." The authority in his tone startled her. For a heartbeat, the entire section went silent. The engines roared somewhere deep beneath, a dull thunder beneath the quiet tension. Mr. Loong leaned forward slightly. Camilla froze beside the galley, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. Dana forced a nervous laugh. "It was an accident, sir. These things happen." Elior turned his head slowly to meet her gaze. His eyes were calm but sharp, a reflection of something deeper than irritation. "Yes," he said softly, "accidents do happen, but some accidents always seem to find the same kind of people." Her smile faltered. The meaning landed exactly where it was meant to. Camilla stepped forward with a towel, her voice trembling. "Sir, If you hand me your laptop, I can help dry it before it seeps in. Elior nodded, handing it over carefully. His sleeve was soaked, but he did not bother to wipe it. The red stain would tell the story better than he ever could. Dana stood stiffly, clutching the tray, unsure whether to apologize again or walk away. The silence was suffocating. Mr. Loong broke it with a soft, deliberate voice. "Miss Clark, I believe the gentleman declined wine earlier, did he not?" Dana blinked. Yes, but it was a misstep, the glass." Loong interrupted gently. "A misstep requires movement. I did not see any." Her cheeks flushed. "Sir, with respect, you do not know what you saw." "I know enough," he replied. His tone carried no anger, only the weight of fact. Camilla placed Elior's laptop back on the tray table, dry but marked with faint red spots. "It should still work," she said softly. Elior thanked her, his voice low. "You did the right thing." Dana cleared her throat. "If you are finished with your performance, sir, I would like to continue my duties." Elior looked at her once more. "By all means." He opened his laptop, the faint glow of the screen illuminating his face. On it was a single email draft waiting to be sent, subject line, "Incident, Flight 107, cabin crew behavior." He did not press send yet. He simply looked at the blinking cursor, then closed the screen. The cabin fell into an uneasy quiet. Outside, lightning flickered along a distant horizon, illuminating the clouds for a brief second before disappearing. Inside, that flash echoed in everyone's mind. A warning, a signal that the calm had limits and the sky was watching. The red stain on Elior's sleeve had already begun to dry, darkening like a bruise beneath the dim cabin light. The smell of wine lingered in the air, faint but sharp, a reminder of the moment everyone wished to forget but could not. Dana Clark had returned to the galley, moving with a stiffness that betrayed her nerves. She whispered to another crew member, her voice a hiss of defense and denial. Elior sat motionless. His laptop rested closed on the tray, his reflection faint in its black screen. He could feel the weight of eyes flicking toward him and away again, passengers pretending not to see. He was used to that kind of silence. It was the world's favorite disguise. He took out his phone, not hurried, not angry, just deliberate. His thumb moved over the screen, unlocking a secure internal channel reserved for Skylux's corporate accounts. The icon pulsed blue, waiting for authorization. He typed 4 simple words. "Code 11, cabin log." He pressed send. No one around him understood what that meant, but within seconds, the Skylux operations system registered the signal. Code 11 was not for emergencies of turbulence or safety. It was for incidents of conduct, a silent flag that summoned accountability without a scene. Dana glanced over her shoulder, uneasy. The younger attendant, Camilla, noticed the tension. "Is everything all right?" she asked quietly. Dana forced a laugh. "Of course, passengers just overreact sometimes." Camilla hesitated. "Maybe not this time." Dana's smile thinned. "Do your job, Camilla." She said it softly, but the edge in her tone cut clean through the hum of the engine. Back in his seat, Elior slipped his phone face down on the tray table. He leaned back and closed his eyes, not out of exhaustion but composure. His mother had told him once, "There is strength in patience. Let the system you built speak for you." He could almost hear her voice now. 2 minutes passed. The intercom beeped, a sound too ordinary to seem important, yet the shift in tone made everyone look up. A message flashed quietly across the crew display near the galley. Dana frowned, reading it. Then she froze. The message read, "Cabin behavior log verification requested, initiated by E. Hayes, Executive Family Clearance." Her throat tightened. She turned to Camilla, whispering, "Did you see this?" Camilla nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am." Dana's eyes darted toward Elior. He was still in his seat, looking out the window as if nothing had happened. The blue light from the sky shimmered against his profile, calm and unbothered. Another alert chimed through the speakers, this time public. Lead Attendant Dana Clark, please report to the cockpit immediately. Every head turned. A murmur spread through the cabin. Dana's hands trembled slightly as she set down the tray she had been holding. "Excuse me," she managed to say, before walking briskly down the aisle. Mr. Leung leaned toward Camilla. "It seems the sky is answering." Camilla whispered, "Yes, sir, I think it just did." Dana disappeared through the cockpit door. The sound of it closing echoed louder than it should have. The passengers exchanged uncertain glances. Elior's phone buzzed once more. A short confirmation message appeared. Code 11 acknowledged. Review initiated. He locked the screen and rested his hand over it, feeling the quiet hum of justice in motion. He did not smile, but a stillness settled over him, like a tide finally turning in his favor. Camilla approached softly. "Sir, would you like me to bring another napkin?" He shook his head. "No, leave it. It tells the truth better than words." She nodded, understanding. Outside, the clouds thickened. The plane cut through a narrow corridor of silver air, and for a brief moment lightning flashed again, clean, bright, inevitable. Inside the cabin, silence grew heavy. Every passenger knew something was unfolding, even if they did not yet know what. Elior looked down at his stained sleeve, then at the seatbelt light glowing above. He whispered to himself, just loud enough to be heard by no one else, "Let the system work." The engines droned on, steady and patient, carrying the weight of a quiet storm that had already begun. The door to the cockpit opened with a soft click. The entire cabin looked up as Dana Clark stepped out, her face drained of color. The confidence she had worn like perfume was gone. Behind her, the captain followed, his expression calm but unmistakably firm. The low hum of the engines was the only sound that filled the tense space. The captain's voice carried with quiet authority. "Miss Clark, please remain seated in the jump seat until further notice." Her mouth opened, searching for the right tone to regain control. "Captain, there has been a misunderstanding. That young man." He lifted a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. "This instruction is not open for discussion." Gasps rippled through first class. Dana hesitated, standing frozen for a moment that felt longer than it was. Then, under the collective gaze of the passengers, she turned and walked toward the rear of the cabin. Her heels no longer clicked. They dragged slightly across the carpet. Camilla Ortiz stepped forward to assist the captain, but he gave her a small nod of reassurance. "Continue regular service, Miss Ortiz. Everything is under control." As the captain returned to the cockpit, murmurs began to spread among the passengers. A woman leaned to her husband, whispering, "What is happening?" Another voice answered softly, "Something about that boy in 7A." Elior did not move. His gaze stayed fixed on the reflection in the window, the dark sky flowing past like a slow river of glass. The red stain on his sleeve had dried into a mark of truth, visible and undeniable. Mr. Leung finally spoke, his voice calm but carrying. "I think the young man has been far more patient than most would be." Camilla looked at him, then at Elior. She took a breath and approached, speaking quietly. "Sir, the captain will handle the incident personally. You do not need to worry about anything else." Elior turned his head slightly. "Thank you, but I was never worried." There was no arrogance in his tone, only certainty. It was the sound of someone who understood his position in the world and did not need to prove it. A few minutes later, Dana returned from the rear, no longer smiling. Her hands were clasped tightly, her posture stiff. She stopped beside Elior's row, leaning slightly toward him. "I do not know who you think you are," she whispered harshly, "but this little stunt will not end well for you." Elior looked up slowly, eyes clear and steady. "You really do not know who I am, do you?" Her jaw clenched. "I do not care who you are." He tilted his head, voice calm as ever. "Then you should, Because the company you work for, Skylux Airways, was founded by my mother, Amara Hayes. The words struck like a quiet explosion. The passengers nearby froze. Camilla's breath caught. Even the hum of the cabin seemed to fade for a second. Elior continued, his tone soft but sharp enough to cut through the air. You laughed at a passenger in the airline my family built. You spilled wine on me, then called it an accident. Now, you are being recorded under a system you did not even know existed. Dana took a step back, her face paling. That is impossible. You are lying. He shook his head once. No, Miss Clark, the system is not lying. It never does. The intercom chimed again, interrupting the silence. A calm voice from the cockpit spoke. All staff, please note. Cabin behavior review has been initiated. Remain professional and await further instruction. Dana's shoulders sagged. The captain's words were confirmation, not rumor. She looked down at Elior, who remained seated, his expression unreadable. You see, he said softly, respect is not something you give to uniforms or titles. It is something you give to people. You might want to remember that when you land. He turned back to the window, the faint reflection of lightning outlining his profile. Behind him, the cabin stayed silent, the weight of realization pressing on everyone like the heavy air before a storm. Camilla stood still, watching him with quiet admiration. Mr. Leung smiled faintly and whispered, "The lesson begins." At 30,000 feet, surrounded by clouds and silence, the truth had finally found its voice. The cabin felt heavier now, as if the air itself had grown aware of what had just been said. The engines hummed in their steady rhythm, yet every heart in first class beat faster. A quiet unease moved through the passengers like wind beneath a closed door. Dana Clark stood frozen beside the curtain that separated first class from business. Her confidence once her armor had cracked. The name she had just heard, Amara Hayes, hung in her mind like thunder waiting to strike. She had seen the CEO's face on company bulletins, in safety manuals, in training videos that reminded every employee what Skylux stood for: dignity, equality, respect. And now she realized the boy she had mocked carried that legacy in his very name. Camilla Ortiz approached carefully, holding a fresh towel. "Miss Clark," she said softly, "the captain asked that you remain seated until landing." Dana's voice wavered. "I do not need your instructions." Camilla looked her in the eye. "They are not mine, they are his." Every word was polite, yet unshakable. Dana's chest rose and fell sharply as she turned away, retreating to the jump seat at the rear of the cabin. Her hands trembled as she fastened the harness. For the first time that night, she felt small inside the uniform she had once thought made her untouchable. At seat 7A, Elior Hayes remained still. His eyes followed the soft glow of clouds drifting past the window. He did not smile, he did not gloat. There was nothing to celebrate, only a truth that had finally revealed itself. Across the aisle, Mr. Leung leaned toward him. "Young man," he said quietly, "I have seen many people try to correct injustice by shouting. You did it with silence. That is rare." Elior turned slightly, his tone calm. "Silence is not weakness, sir. It is clarity." Leung nodded, respect clear in his eyes. A soft announcement interrupted the quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into New York City. Please fasten your seat belts and prepare for landing." Camilla walked down the aisle, checking each passenger. When she reached Elior, she stopped for a moment. "Sir," she said gently, "thank you for staying calm. Most people would not have." He looked at her and offered the faintest smile. "You did what was right when it mattered. That is what most people would not have done." Her eyes softened. "I just did my job." "No," Elior said. "You remembered what it is supposed to mean." As she moved away, a wave of quiet pride crossed her face. Dana remained silent in the back, staring at the floor, the sound of the engines echoing around her. She thought of the years she had worked for Skylux, the policies she had ignored, the faces she had judged too quickly. Each memory returned like a whisper from the overhead vents. You should have known better. The landing lights brightened. Passengers adjusted their seats, buckled their belts, but no one spoke. The atmosphere was different now, humbled, reflective. When the wheels touched down, the cabin filled with the roar of friction and wind. The aircraft slowed, engines revering power. Dana closed her eyes, gripping the seatbelt strap as if it could anchor her to something familiar. As the plane taxied to the gate, the intercom beeped. The captain's voice came through, steady and clear. "We would like to thank all passengers for flying with Skylux Airways. A special acknowledgement has been noted for our executive family member, Mr. Elior Hayes. We appreciate your discretion during tonight's flight." Every head turned toward him. Some faces showed recognition, others shame. Elior nodded politely but said nothing. The moment was not about triumph, it was about truth coming full circle. The seatbelt sign went off with a chime. Dana unbuckled slowly, her hands trembling. Camilla stood near the front, waiting. As passengers began to stand, Mr. Loon placed a hand on Elior's shoulder. "Justice does not always arrive in noise," he said. "Sometimes it arrives in a voice that does not need to rise." Elior nodded once. It arrived exactly as it should. Outside, the city lights of New York shimmered across the wet runway like scattered stars. Inside, one woman sat in silence, facing the consequences she had created. And one young man, calm and unbroken, prepared to step into the world that had just learned his name. The cabin doors opened with a soft hiss. The cold air from the jet bridge mixed with the stale warmth of the plane. Passengers began to gather their belongings, eager to leave, their faces still carrying traces of unease from what had happened. The silence that had filled the final minutes of the flight clung to them as they stood in line. Elior stayed seated for a moment longer. He looked at the dry stain on his sleeve, then at his reflection in the window. The city beyond the glass was alive with lights, endless and indifferent. But he felt something shift, an invisible balance restored. Camilla approached quietly. "We have arrived, sir." He nodded. "Thank you, Camilla. You did more than your job today." She smiled faintly. "I hope so. I just thought if that had been me, I would have wanted someone to notice." "You noticed," he said. "That is what matters." She looked down, humbled, and moved to assist the other passengers. Behind her, Dana Clark sat rigid in her jump seat near the galley, waiting for the final signal from the captain. Her face was pale, eyes hollow, posture unnaturally still. She had not spoken since the announcement. Even the other crew members avoided her gaze. When the seatbelt sign turned off, Elior stood and retrieved his backpack. He moved through the narrow aisle, each step slow, deliberate. As he reached the front, the captain emerged from the cockpit. "Mr. Hayes," he said respectfully, "we are honored to have you aboard. I am deeply sorry for the events during this flight. The company has already been informed." Elior shook his hand. "Thank you, Captain. You handled it exactly right." He stepped off the plane into the jet bridge, where a quiet figure waited, his mother, Amara Hayes. She stood in a long black coat, her hair tied neatly back, her posture calm and unshakable. The airport light caught the small gold pin on her lapel, the Skylux emblem. For a moment the crowd moved around them, unaware of who she was. Then, as Dana exited the aircraft, she stopped abruptly at the sight of her. Color drained from her face. "Mrs. Hayes." Amara turned slowly. "Miss Clark," she said evenly, "walk with me." Dana obeyed, her voice caught somewhere between fear and apology. "Ma'am, I can explain." Amara stopped her with a single glance. "Do not. You have already said enough tonight." She gestured toward a quiet corner of the gate area. "You will report to headquarters tomorrow morning. Human Resources will conduct a full review." Dana's eyes filled with panic. "Please, Mrs. Hayes, I never meant." Amara's voice remained steady. "You meant to judge. You meant to humiliate. What you did not mean was to be caught." Dana lowered her head. The weight of truth pressed down harder than any punishment could. Elior watched the exchange in silence. He had seen his mother command boardrooms and government officials, but here she was the embodiment of calm justice, measured, controlled, unyielding. Amara turned to him, her tone softening instantly. "You handled it well." "I just followed what you taught me," he said, "to stay quiet until the right moment." She smiled faintly. "Quiet does not mean passive, it means powerful in the right direction." They walked together down the long corridor, the hum of the airport surrounding them. Travelers passed without knowing they were witnessing the CEO and her son, two people bound not just by blood but by a shared belief in dignity. Amara glanced at the stain on his sleeve. "Keep that hoodie," she said. "It is a reminder that the sky does not lie." He nodded. "I will." Behind them, Dana stood at the gate, her reflection visible in the glass wall, small, trembling, and utterly alone. The lesson had been delivered. The hierarchy she relied on had folded in on itself, replaced by something she could not manipulate: accountability. As Elior and Amara walked toward the exit, the announcement for the next flight echoed through the terminal. Another journey, another chance for the world to be better than it was tonight. And as the doors closed behind them, the story that began with a laugh at the gate found its landing, not in anger but in grace. Morning arrived gray and deliberate over New York City. The skyline glowed faintly through the mist, glass towers turning gold where the sun touched them. At the headquarters of Skylux Airways, the company's crest gleamed on the marble wall, an emblem that promised equality, excellence, and respect. But that promise was about to be tested in the light of truth. Inside the conference room on the 21st floor, the air was quiet except for the low hum of the ventilation system. Amara Hayes sat at the head of the long table, her posture straight, hands folded neatly. Around her were senior members of human resources, flight operations, and legal counsel. A file sat open before her, its title stamped in black: Incident Report, Flight 107. The door opened. Dana Clark entered, still wearing her uniform, though it now looked more like a reminder than a badge. Her eyes were tired, her movements small. She took a seat when invited, her fingers clasping each other tightly. Amara's voice broke the silence, calm but unwavering. "Miss Clark, before we begin, do you understand why you are here?" Dana nodded. "Yes, ma'am, because of what happened on the flight last night." "Because of how it happened," Amara corrected gently. "Tell me, in your own words, what you recall." Dana hesitated, her throat dry. "There was a misunderstanding with a passenger in first class. He appeared out of place. I made an error in judgment." Amara's gaze remained fixed. "An error." Dana swallowed hard. "A lapse in professionalism. I thought he might have boarded the wrong section. I should not have spoken the way I did." One of the HR officers leaned forward. "And the spilled wine?" Dana's eyes flickered. "That was an accident." Amara tilted her head slightly. "Was it?" The question hung in the air, soft but merciless. Dana's shoulders slumped. "I did not mean to humiliate him," she said weakly. Amara folded her hands together. "Miss Clark, Skylux built its name on the belief that every passenger deserves dignity, regardless of appearance, accent, or assumption. You did not spill wine. You spilled contempt." Dana's lips trembled. "I have served this company for 18 years. "Then you, of all people, should have known better," Amara replied. Silence filled the room. The HR officer cleared his throat and began reading from the verified report: eyewitness statements, internal logs, and the automatic recording of the Code 11 event. Every word was documented. Every gesture had been observed. When the reading ended, Amara spoke again, quieter now. "You will be placed on indefinite suspension. Further action will depend on the board's decision. I am not removing your humanity, Miss Clark. I am reminding you of it." Dana nodded, tears gathering but unshed. "I understand." Amara stood, signaling the end of the meeting. "You may go." Dana rose slowly, her footsteps soft against the polished floor. She reached the door, hesitated, then turned. "Mrs. Hayes," she said quietly. He never raised his voice. Amara met her eyes. He did not need to. When the door closed, the room stayed silent for a long moment. Then one of the HR executives spoke. "Madam, should we inform the Public Relations Office?" "Yes," Amara said, "but not to control the story, to tell it honestly. Let it remind everyone that respect is not optional, it is policy." She gathered the file and walked toward the wide window. Below, planes rolled across the runways like silver arrows beneath the morning sun. Each one carried strangers who trusted the company to treat them as equals. Behind her, Elior stepped into the room. He wore the same hoodie from the flight, the red stain still visible. "You did not have to come in so early," he said. Amara smiled faintly. "I did not, I wanted to." He looked out the window beside her. "It feels different seeing the planes from this side." "It always does," she replied. "Justice is not about seeing someone fall. It is about making sure the system stands." Elior nodded, his reflection overlapping hers in the glass. 2 generations, one purpose. The world outside kept moving, but inside that room, something deeper had taken flight, a quiet restoration of what dignity truly means. A week later, the headquarters of Skylux Airways stood bathed in morning light. The atrium was filled with employees from every department: pilots, attendants, engineers, executives. Cameras lined the back wall. A banner stretched above the stage. Skylux Global Town Hall, a new standard of respect. The murmur of the crowd faded as Amara Hayes stepped up to the podium. She was composed, dressed in a dark suit that carried authority without effort. At her side stood Elior, no longer just a quiet passenger but now a symbol of something greater. Amara's voice, steady and clear, carried through the hall. "Good morning." Skylux was built on a single belief, that travel should bring the world closer, not divide it. But last week that belief was tested, and the test did not come from outside competitors or market challenges. It came from within. A low hush rippled through the room. She continued, her eyes meeting those of the employees before her. "A member of our crew failed to uphold our values on Flight 107. She made judgments where she should have offered service. She questioned belonging when she should have practiced respect. But what matters most is not the failure, it is how we choose to respond to it." Amara paused, letting the silence breathe. "We are not here to shame anyone. We are here to learn. Respect cannot be a slogan on our walls, it must be a reflex in our actions." Behind her, a large screen lit up with the words, "The Elior Principle, Dignity Without Condition." She turned slightly toward her son. "This new initiative is named after Elior Hayes, not because of who he is to me, but because of what he reminded us all of, that humanity does not need a uniform or a title to deserve respect. Every Skylux employee, from intern to executive, will complete this new training program. It will not teach courtesy, it will teach awareness." A round of applause began quietly, then grew louder, filling the atrium with a kind of approval that felt sincere. Amara looked toward the cameras. "To our passengers, to our partners, and to the public watching from around the world, I give you my word. Skylux will not measure worth by appearance, accent, or assumption, only by how we treat one another. That is the foundation of our company, and it will not crack again." Elior stepped forward as the applause softened. He took the microphone with a calm expression. "I did not ask for this story to become public, but maybe it needed to, because silence only protects the wrong things. What happened on that plane happens in airports, offices, schools, everywhere people forget to see one another." He glanced toward the crowd, his voice steady but filled with quiet emotion. "I am not angry. I am not proud. I am just certain that if we can make respect a habit instead of a reaction, maybe the next flight will be smoother for everyone on board." The room stood still for a long moment. Then Amara placed a hand on his shoulder and looked out at her staff one last time. "We will keep flying," she said, "but from now on we will do it with eyes open." The applause rose again, thunderous and sincere. Some employees wiped away tears. Camilla Ortiz stood in the second row, hands clasped, pride shining quietly on her face. At the back of the hall, Dana Clark watched from a distance. She had not been dismissed permanently. Amara had insisted she attend the town hall. Her expression was humbled, her eyes glistening. For the first time in years, she was not wearing her uniform. She was simply human, standing among others, learning what respect truly felt like. As the event drew to a close, Elior turned to his mother. "You could have fired her," he said softly. Amara shook her head. "I could have, but change does not begin with punishment, it begins with recognition." He smiled faintly. "Then I think the lesson landed." The crowd began to disperse, their footsteps echoing across the polished floor. Outside, a plane roared overhead, rising cleanly into a clear blue sky. The company had taken off many times before, but today its soul was finally airborne. Night returned to the city, soft and forgiving. The last planes of the day drifted above the skyline, their lights blinking like moving constellations against the dark. Inside the Skylux observation lounge, Elior Hayes sat by the wide glass wall, watching one aircraft after another ascend into the clouds. The reflection of the runway shimmered across his eyes, steady, golden, infinite. A door opened behind him. Amara Hayes walked in quietly, her steps sure but gentle. She carried 2 mugs of coffee, the kind she used to make when he stayed up late studying as a child. She placed one beside him, the steam curling into the cool air. "You always liked watching the departures more than the arrivals," she said. Elior nodded. "Departures are honest, they tell you who is ready to rise." Amara smiled faintly. "And arrivals remind you who has made it back." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that speaks between people who understand each other without words. Outside, a Skylux jet lifted smoothly into the night, its engines a low, distant hum. Amara looked at her son. "The board approved the new policy today. The Elior principle will be part of every training session from now on. It will carry your name across every airport where we fly." Elior shook his head slightly. "It is not about my name." She studied him for a long moment. "No," she said softly, "it is about the message your silence carried." He looked out toward the runway again. "When Dana spilled that wine, I could have shouted. I wanted to, but something stopped me. Maybe it was your voice. Maybe it was just knowing that anger would have proved her right." Amara nodded. "Sometimes calm is the loudest form of defiance." The room dimmed as the automatic lights lowered for the night. Their reflections merged in the glass, a mother and son framed by the city they had both fought, in different ways, to change. Elior spoke again, his tone thoughtful. "Do you think people like her ever change?" Amara turned her gaze toward the horizon. "That depends on what they choose to remember. Some people remember the humiliation of being caught. Others remember the moment they realized they were wrong. Only the second kind ever change." He let her words settle before answering. "Then I hope she is the second kind." Amara's smile was quiet, almost invisible. "That is what makes you different, Elior. You do not fight to destroy, you fight to rebuild." The sound of another departing flight rolled through the glass. Elior watched its wings tilt upward, slicing through the dark like light through water. "You know," he said, "it still surprises me how the sky never lies. Up there, everything is equal, no ranks, no colors, no assumptions, just gravity and lift." His mother followed his gaze. "Exactly," she said, "and maybe that is why we keep flying, to remind ourselves what equality feels like, even if it only lasts until we land." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Amara reached over, resting her hand gently on his. "I am proud of you, not because of your name, but because of the quiet way you carried it." He looked at her, gratitude soft in his eyes. You built the company. I just reminded it why. The runway lights blinked in sequence, guiding another jet into the air. Its glow reflected across the glass, painting their faces in shifting bands of white and gold. Amara whispered almost to herself, "The sky never lies." Elior replied, "And justice does not need to shout." They sat together, watching the light fade upward into the dark, the quiet hum of engines stretching into the distance. As the last plane disappeared into the horizon, a single line remained, thin, silver, and unwavering. It shimmered like a promise written across the night, that dignity once claimed never falls back to earth. The story that began with laughter at a gate ended here, in stillness, in truth, and in the unbroken calm of a sky that belongs to everyone.